Okay, imagine this. You're traveling, maybe somewhere totally new. You desperately need a new phone, right? You walk into a bright, noisy electronics store. How confident are you feeling in that moment? About actually talking to someone, asking the right things, making sure you don't get ripped off or just end up with the wrong gadget. Or, hey, even in your own language, how easy is it really to say exactly what you want when faced with all those options? So today we're doing a deep dive into something I found pretty interesting. It's an English practice podcast, and his whole focus is electronic shopping English practice. No, just to be clear, we're not here to teach you English. Our aim is different. We want to unpack their method, look at how they teach communication for this very specific, very real situation. Yeah, our mission is to really pull out the key insights from how they structure this learning. We'll dig into how it helps learners, intermediate ones, get good, not just with words, but with comparing products, asking questions politely, effectively.
We want to see what makes their approach work so well, and honestly, what that can teach us about just communicating clearly, no matter the context. And we're looking at their own materials for this, the video description, the podcast, summary, that sort of thing. All right, let's get into it. The core of this practice podcast seems built around a scenario anyone can relate to. They put a shopper, Alex, into an electronics store, talking with a shop assistant. And there's this guide, Sarah, sort of explaining the language side of things as it happens.
It's a smart setup. What's really fascinating, I think, is how that scenario immediately makes the learning practical. It's not grammar floating in space. No, it's about using language right now to achieve something. Their scenario breakdown lists the key steps, asking about product features, comparing products, discussing prices, and then making a decision.
Right, it maps it out.
Exactly. It gives you a clear path through what can be a confusing interaction.
So it's less about just knowing vocabulary list and more about hitting specific conversation goals, as they call them. They're trying to model how real shopping conversations actually work, the kinds of questions people ask. Think about Alex asking, does this phone have a good camera? Or how long does the battery last? Those are really common practical questions.
And if you step back and look at the bigger picture, it really underscores how vital precise questioning is. If you don't ask the right questions, you simply can't get the info you need to compare things properly. And the episode also gets into making statements like, this laptop is faster than that one, or handling price talk like, this one is cheaper, but that one is better quality. It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How often, even in our first language, do we maybe struggle to put those comparisons into clear words?
That's a really good point. We often just say, this one's better, without really defining how. So even if English is your first language, what's the takeaway here? Maybe it's about being more conscious, more structured in how we ask questions, how we compare things when we shop.
Yeah, it's about drilling down to what actually matters to you as the buyer, and then being able to articulate that clearly.
Okay, now here's where I think it gets really interesting from a teaching perspective. They don't just throw you into the deep end with the scenario. No, they deliberately give you a specific linguistic toolkit. They focus hard on two things: the essential words you need and the grammar structure to use them effectively.
Absolutely. You can see it in their conversation goals.
Yeah.
They explicitly mention teaching electronics-related vocabulary and practicing comparative adjectives.
Wow.
It's this dual focus that's
Yeah.
quite powerful. You get the nouns, the features, and the way to compare them. They're taught together, which makes sense.
So the specific vocabulary, what are we talking about? They list things like screen, battery, obviously memory, storage, warranty, charger, camera.
The basics.
Yeah, the real nuts and bolts for talking about pretty much any phone, laptop, tablet these days.
And why these specific terms? It's because they map directly onto the key features and, frankly, the main anxieties people have when buying electronics. Think about memory versus storage. Lots of people get those mixed up, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Understanding the difference is actually crucial for making a smart buy. And the podcast tackles this by putting the terms right into the conversation, giving them context.
So you learn what they mean in use.
Exactly. It helps avoid those common slip-ups.
And then there's the grammar piece. Comparative adjectives. They call out the big ones. Bigger, smaller, faster, slower, cheaper, more expensive, and better, worse.
And what's clever here is that these aren't just presented as dry grammar rules. They're framed as the essential tools for expressing what you prefer, for weighing your options, for making a decision. When the character Alex practices saying, These headphones are more comfortable, or this laptop is faster than that one. They're not just making sentences, they're actively using these comparatives to state needs, articulate desires, make a judgment. It's language for evaluating and choosing.
It's a great way to put it. It's not just describing, it's judging value.
Right, it's the language of preference and justification.
So, connecting that back, how often do you, listening now, consciously use these specific comparative structures to really explain why one thing is a better fit for you than another? This practice material kind of reminds us that precise language is powerful for making our own choices clear and for understanding the differences between the options out there.
Yeah, it's about being deliberate with those words.
Okay, so moving beyond just the words and the grammar structures, this deep dive also shows us something else important. The podcast seems to really emphasize how you communicate. It suggests it's not just what you say, but the way you say it that matters.
Exactly. That comes through clearly. The conversation goals specifically mention modeling polite expressions for shopping. They give examples like, could you show me? Or I'd like to know more about. So it's teaching the social lubricant, if you will, how to ask things respectfully, effectively.
Which makes total sense. It's about building a bit of rapport, isn't it? If you're polite, you often get better help, better information.
Definitely. Politeness often smooths the path to getting what you need. And what's also interesting is their focus on the teaching elements, things like having clear, moderately paced dialogue with natural intonation.
Oh.
Now, that's not just about making it easy to understand. It's also about modeling how to sound natural, which builds the learner's own confidence in speaking.
So listening to natural rhythm helps you reproduce it.
Precisely. When you sound more natural, you feel more confident. It's a positive cycle. And this ties right into their main learning goal, which they state is to help learners build confidence by practicing in real-life contexts.
Confidence seems key. And they even include a mini role-play challenge. They encourage the listeners to actually try comparing two items out loud.
Yeah, that's the active part. That's crucial.
It forces you to actually produce the language.
Exactly. It gets it out of your head and into practice. It's one thing to passively understand. It's another thing entirely to actively articulate it. That's where the learning really sticks. And, connecting this to the bigger picture, it really highlights how important active practice is for any skill, language, or otherwise. It makes you wonder, how much better could our own communication be, even in our native language, if we took a moment to practice? Maybe just mentally run through a tricky conversation beforehand, think about the polite phrasing.
That's an interesting thought, like rehearsing for important moments.
It could make a real difference in clarity and confidence, I think.
It really drives home the point that it's not just about having information, but being able to share it clearly, confidently, and, politely.
So how can you maybe apply this idea, this focus on practiced, polite, precise communication, maybe in your own day-to-day stuff, whether you're trying to persuade someone, negotiate something, or even just explain what you want for dinner? So wrapping this up, what's the big takeaway for you, our listener? Our deep dive into this electronics shopping English practice podcast. Well, it shows it's more than just a language lesson. It's really a well-thought-out system, a kind of masterclass in practical communication, built around a real scenario. It focuses on building confidence through structured practice.
Yeah, it's a fantastic reminder that effective communication, whatever the language, really hinges on understanding the situation, having the right words and structures, and crucially, having the confidence to use them. And using them politely and precisely makes all the difference. The ultimate goal seems to be empowering people to handle these real-world interactions effectively.
Giving them the tools and the confidence to navigate those situations. Absolutely. So here's something to maybe chew on after listening today. Thinking about this very structured way they approach teaching communication for a specific task, buying electronics, what other situations in your own life, your everyday interactions, could benefit from that kind of focused toolkit? Think about it. How could being a bit more precise with your comparisons, a bit more intentional with your polite requests, maybe a bit more practiced in your delivery, how could that change a potentially difficult conversation into something much smoother, much more successful for you?